The emergency alarms started ringing just as the council was about to go back to their meeting with the humans. This time the sound was different, deeper and more urgent. It was the alarm they used when there might be a military attack. In the station's control room, the duty officer was staring at his scanner display with disbelief. "Ma'am, we have multiple contacts coming out of faster-than-light travel. 4 large signatures moving together in formation." Kethavara rushed to the control center, her scales flashing between orange and red with stress. "How large?" "The 3 smaller ones are showing as 4,200 meters each." "The big one?" The officer paused, checking his readings again. 7,800 meters, ma'am." Through the observation windows, they could see the new arrivals. 4 massive shapes hung in space like metal mountains, their hulls shining under the light of the distant sun. Even from far away, they made everything else in the system look tiny. "Get me an open channel to all ships," Kethavara ordered. "This is Nexus Prime Control to unknown human vessels. Please tell us what you want." The response came in a calm, professional voice. "Nexus Prime Control. This is Admiral Zhang Wujin, commanding the 3rd Colonial Patrol Fleet. We got reports of first contact meetings and have come to provide standard escort duties. We apologize for any trouble. Standard escort duties." Kethavara closed her eyes and tried to stay calm. What the humans considered standard escort was larger than anything the galactic military had ever put together in one place. "Admiral Zhang, this is Council Speaker Kethavara. Your escort is rather large. Are you expecting trouble?" Admiral Zhang's voice carried a note of confusion. "Trouble? No, Speaker Kethavara. This is just routine protocol for first contact situations. We brought 3 heavy cruisers and 1 dreadnought. Actually, we kept the fleet small to avoid looking aggressive." Small? They considered a 7-kilometer dreadnought and 3 4-kilometer cruisers to be a small fleet. Captain Ko Ji-wan, commanding the heavy cruiser Iron Mountain, opened her own communication channel. "Nexus Prime Control, this is Captain Ko. I apologize for our late arrival. We had to take a longer route through hyperspace to avoid messing up civilian shipping lanes with our gravitational wake." Civilian shipping lanes. The humans were so large that their military ships could accidentally damage civilian traffic just by traveling through the same area. On the Harmony's edge, Captain Lee was watching the arrival of the patrol fleet with mild interest. Admiral Zhang was an old friend from their academy days, and Lee was looking forward to catching up. Commander Yoon signaled the Iron Mountain and let them know we're having diplomatic meetings. "Standard security protocols should be enough." "Yes, sir. Should I bring our team back from the alien station?" "Not yet. Let them finish the cultural exchange first. The patrol fleet can wait." In the council chambers, the alien representatives had come back together, but their attention was clearly split between the humans in the room and the massive fleet outside their windows. Ambassador Park noticed their distraction and looked out at the new arrivals herself. "Oh, that's Admiral Zhang's patrol fleet. I wasn't expecting them, but it's good to see them." The Admiral is an old friend of Captain Lee's. "Patrol fleet," Vix repeated weakly. "Yes. They probably came to check on our first contact mission. Standard procedure, really. Though I'm surprised they brought the Eternal Vigilance." "The Eternal Vigilance?" Kickstall asked. "The Dreadnought. It's Admiral Zhang's flagship. Beautiful ship. 7,800 meters of the finest human engineering. It can carry 50,000 crew members plus their families." The alien stared at her. 50,000 crew members with families meant the ship was basically a moving city. And that was just one vessel. Dr. Choi was taking notes on alien reactions and noticed how quiet everyone had become. "Is something wrong? You all seem very worried about the patrol fleet." Bloop 7 flashed a series of rapid upset colors. "Your patrol fleet is larger than our entire space navy. The combined forces of all 12 council species couldn't match what you've brought here as a routine escort." "Oh." Ambassador Park suddenly understood the problem. "I see you're thinking in military terms. But really, these ships aren't built mainly for fighting. They're exploration and colonization vessels that happen to have defensive weapons." Captain Shin Tae-hyun, commanding the dreadnought Eternal Vigilance, was doing his own first contact protocols. He had launched several small scout ships to survey the local space and make sure there were no navigation dangers for the larger vessels. The alien defense forces watched these scout ships with growing despair. Each scout was 300 meters long, larger than most alien frigates, and the dreadnought had launched 20 of them. Their scouts could destroy our entire defense grid, one alien captain reported to his government. What do we do? Nothing, came the reply. Do absolutely nothing that could be seen as hostile. We're dealing with forces beyond our understanding. Back in the council chambers, Professor Lee was trying to ease the tension by sharing more information about human culture and history. You have to understand, she explained, humans have always built big. It's part of our nature. When we first started exploring space, we brought entire cities with us. The idea of leaving home in small ships just never occurred to us. Morden had managed to get his calculation device working again and was running new numbers. Professor Lee, how many ships does humanity have in total? Ships? Professor Lee thought for a moment. Well, that depends on how you define a ship. We have about 50,000 vessels over 1 kilometer in length, maybe 500,000 smaller ships, shuttles, and industrial craft. 50,000 ships over 1 kilometer, Morden said slowly. The entire Galactic Council has maybe 200 ships that size total. Lieutenant Nam was getting confused by all the worried faces around the table. Are we doing something wrong? Everyone seems really nervous all of a sudden. Zeph, the energy being Luminar representative who had been silent until now, finally spoke. Zeph's form was a shifting cloud of light and energy, and when he communicated, it was through direct thought transfer rather than speech. Lieutenant Nam, your species operates on a scale that we have never seen before. Your routine operations involve more resources and energy than most civilizations use in their entire history. We are adjusting to this reality. Oh, Lieutenant Nam said. Well, I guess we do like to build things big, but that's just because space is really, really big, you know? If you're going to travel between stars, you might as well bring everything you need with you. Commander Yoon got a message on his communication device and stood up. Ambassador, Admiral Jang requests permission to come aboard Nexus Prime for a formal meeting. He's prepared to take one of the shuttle pods. The aliens looked at each other with resignation. Another shuttle pod. Another impossibly large, small ship. Of course, Kethavara said tiredly. We'll prepare our largest docking bay. Actually, Commander Yoon said, the Admiral suggests using the maintenance pod. He doesn't want to cause any more problems for your docking operations than necessary, as if a 400-meter maintenance pod was somehow less of a problem than whatever. Shuttle the Admiral normally. Captain Kojiwan was observing the alien station through her ship's powerful telescopes. To her, it looked like a delicate piece of jewelry hanging in space, beautiful but impossibly fragile. Navigation. Make sure we maintain a safe distance from that station, she ordered. Our mass field could damage their structure if we get too close. Yes, ma'am. Maintaining 50,000 kilometers distance. Should we deploy the gravity buffers? Good idea. We don't want to accidentally pull any of their smaller ships toward us. On Nexus Prime, Techmore was monitoring the gravitational effects of the human fleet and making constant adjustments to keep the station stable. The 4 massive ships were like miniature planets, and their combined gravitational pull was affecting everything in the system. How do they land these things? He wondered aloud. How do you bring a 7-kilometer ship down to a planet's surface? The answer, he realized, was probably that they didn't. Ships that large likely never landed anywhere. They were permanent space dwellers, mobile worlds that carried entire civilizations between the stars. As Admiral Jang prepared to shuttle over to meet with the Council, Kethavara was trying to prepare her colleagues for what was coming. Remember, she told them, the humans seem genuinely peaceful. They're just bigger than anything we've ever dealt with. We need to focus on building good relations, not on how scared we feel. But even as she said it, Kethavara couldn't shake the feeling that the galaxy had just become a much smaller place. And humanity, without even trying, had become its newest and most powerful force. Admiral Jang Woojin was a man in his 50s with silver hair and kind eyes that had seen many wonders across the galaxy. As he stepped off the maintenance pod and into Nexus Prime's docking bay, he immediately noticed how cramped everything felt compared to human buildings. Council Speaker Kethavara, he said with a formal bow. I am Admiral Jang. I apologize if our arrival caused any alarm. We simply wanted to make sure our diplomatic team stays safe during these historic first contact meetings. Kethavara studied the human admiral carefully. Despite commanding a fleet that could probably conquer half the galaxy, he seemed genuinely humble and worried about causing offense. Admiral, your fleet is impressive. We were wondering about your intentions. Our intentions? Admiral Jang looked puzzled. To provide security for our diplomats and to learn about your fascinating civilizations. Is there some concern I should know about? Dr. Han Youngman, the fleet's chief physicist, had come with the Admiral. He was a tall, thin man who spent most of his time thinking about the math principles that made large-scale construction possible. Perhaps I can help explain, Dr. Han offered. I've been studying your station's design, and I think there might be some basic differences in how our species approach space engineering. As they walked to the enlarged conference room that Techmore had hastily prepared, Dr. Han began his explanation. Your species seem to value efficiency and specialization. You build ships for specific purposes, using just enough resources to accomplish the task. It's very elegant. And humans don't think that way? Bloop 7 flashed curiously. Not really. We come from a world with abundant resources and harsh environments. Our ancestors learned to build things that would last through anything nature could throw at them. When we went to space, we brought that philosophy with us. They entered the conference room where Ambassador Park and her team were waiting with the full council. The room now had a large table that could accommodate everyone, plus holographic displays for sharing information. Dr. Han, Ambassador Park said, perhaps you could show our friends some of the engineering principles behind our ship designs. Dr. Han turned on a holographic projector and displayed a cross-section of the Harmony's edge. The aliens could see the multiple layers of hull armor, backup life support systems, and vast internal spaces. This ship is designed to operate for 2 centuries without major repairs, Dr. Han explained. It has workshops that can manufacture almost anything we might need, gardens to grow food, schools for children, even recreational facilities. It's not just a ship, it's a self-contained community. Morden leaned forward, studying the display. But why make it so large? Couldn't you build smaller, more efficient vessels? We could, Dr. Han agreed. But then we'd need dozens of smaller ships to do what one large ship can do. More ships mean more crews, more maintenance, more fuel, more everything. In the long run, one big ship is actually more efficient than many small ones. Techmore's crystal body began glowing with understanding. You're thinking in terms of centuries instead of decades. If a ship operates for 200 years instead of 50, then the initial construction cost becomes much less important. Exactly. Dr. Han smiled. And because our ships last so long, we can afford to overbuild them. Extra space, stronger hulls, more advanced systems. It all pays for itself over time. Captain Bei Yunju chose that moment to request docking permission. Her arrival had been delayed by a fascinating star phenomenon she'd discovered on the way to the meeting. Nexus Prime Control. This is Captain Bei aboard the science vessel Endless Curiosity, requesting permission to approach. We have some wonderful space data to share with your scientists. The aliens had thought they were getting used to human ship sizes, but the Endless Curiosity was even larger than Admiral Jang's dreadnought. At 5,100 meters long, it was a floating research complex that dwarfed most space stations. A science vessel, Vic said weakly. Your science vessel is larger than our battle stations. Captain Bei's voice came over the comm with obvious excitement. Oh, this is so thrilling. Our first meeting with galactic civilization. I have 1,000 questions about your cultures, your histories, your scientific achievements. Would it be possible to arrange extended cultural exchanges? Her enthusiasm was contagious. Despite their worries about human ship sizes, the aliens found themselves warming to the idea of sharing knowledge with these strange giants. Captain Bei, Kethavara said, we would be honored to arrange scientific exchanges. But first, we need to address some practical concerns about our facilities. Admiral Jang nodded understanding. Of course. Our ships are larger than what you're used to. We'd be happy to help upgrade your docking facilities if you're interested. Upgrade how? Techmore asked. Well, we have construction ships that specialize in building space installations. We could expand your station to accommodate larger vessels. It would make future meetings much easier. The aliens looked at each other. The humans were offering to renovate their most important diplomatic station as casually as offering to help rearrange furniture. Construction ships? Techmore asked. Sure. They're about 12 kilometers long with full manufacturing capabilities. They could have your station upgraded in a few months. 12 kilometers. The aliens were beyond shock now. They were entering a realm of numb acceptance. Collective voice harmony. The hive mind Resonari representative finally spoke. The Resonari communicated through harmonic vibrations, and their translated voice had a musical quality. Humans, Harmony sang. We need to understand. Your casual approach to megascale engineering suggests resources and capabilities far beyond anything we've imagined. Are you trying to intimidate us? Ambassador Park looked genuinely distressed. Not at all. We're here because we want to be part of the galactic community. We want to learn from you, trade with you, share discoveries with you. But you could conquer us all, Kixtel said bluntly. Your routine patrol fleet is larger than our combined militaries. Why would we want to conquer you? Lieutenant Nam asked, genuinely puzzled. You have different cultures, different knowledge, different perspectives on the universe. That's incredibly valuable. Conquest would just destroy all the things that make you interesting. Dr. Choi had been quietly observing the aliens throughout all these conversations, and she finally spoke up. I think I understand the problem, she said. In your experience, military power and territorial expansion go together. But humans learned a long time ago that cooperation is more profitable than conquest. We build big ships because we're explorers and colonizers, not conquerors. Besides, Captain Bay added over the comm, there's an entire galaxy to explore. Why fight over the small part that's already inhabited, when there are millions of empty star systems just waiting to be discovered? Admiral Jang stood up and walked to the observation windows where the human fleet hung in space like sleeping giants. The universe is vast beyond imagination, he said quietly. There's room for all of us to grow and prosper. Humanity has no interest in dominating anyone. We just want to be part of something larger than ourselves. Kethavara felt something shift in her understanding. These humans weren't conquerors or intimidators. They were just big. Everything about them was scaled up from normal galactic standards, but their intentions seemed genuinely peaceful. Admiral, she said, what would you need from us to establish permanent diplomatic relations? Honestly, just friendship. Trade partnerships if you're interested. Maybe some expanded docking facilities so our ships can visit more easily. And cultural exchange programs. We have so much to learn from each other. Morden was working on his calculator again, but this time his expression was thoughtful rather than panicked. You know, if we combine human construction capabilities with our efficient design principles, we could build amazing things together. Now you're thinking like a human, Dr. Han grinned. Always looking for the next big project. 3 days later, the formal first contact agreements were signed aboard the Endless Curiosity. The science vessel's main conference room was large enough to hold representatives from all species comfortably, with space left over for cultural displays and scientific equipment. Captain Bay had turned the signing ceremony into a celebration of galactic diversity, with music, food, and art from every participating species. The humans contributed a holographic display, showing the aurora effects around Earth's poles, which left the aliens speechless with its beauty. To new friendships, Admiral Jang said, raising a glass of human wine, and to the endless possibilities that come from thinking bigger. To new friendships, the aliens replied, and for the first time since the humans had arrived, they weren't thinking about ship sizes or military capabilities. They were thinking about the future and all the wonders they might discover together. Outside the massive viewports of the Endless Curiosity, construction drones were already beginning work on the expanded docking facilities for Nexus Prime. The galaxy was about to get a lot more interconnected and much, much bigger. The meeting room on Nexus Prime was the biggest conference space on the station, but it still felt crowded with representatives from 12 different alien species. Ambassador Park sat at one end of the long table, with Dr. Choi and Commander Yoon on either side of her. The aliens filled the rest of the seats, their various shapes creating a colorful display of galactic diversity. Before we begin formal talks, Ambassador Park said, perhaps we could share some information about our civilizations. It would help us understand each other better. Kethavara nodded her reptilian head. An excellent idea. Would you like to start? Ambassador Park turned on a small holographic projector she had brought from the maintenance pod. A three-dimensional image appeared above the table, showing the Sol system with Earth at its center. This is our home system, she explained. We call it Sol, and our home planet is Earth. We've been exploring space for about 200 years now. The hologram showed various structures around Earth, space stations, orbital homes, and construction facilities. To the humans, it was a modest display of their local infrastructure. To the aliens, it looked like the industrial heart of a galactic empire. Those orbital structures, Morden said, leaning forward. How big are they? The largest habitat cylinder is about 50 kilometers long, Ambassador Park replied. It houses about 2 million people. Vix's forearms moved rapidly with excitement. 2 million people? In space? Our largest space station has maybe 10,000 people living on it. 50 kilometers, Chixtal repeated, his feathers standing on end. You build homes larger than our biggest warships. Dr. Choi opened her tablet and showed more images. These are pictures from some of our other colonies. This is New Seoul, on Kepler 442b. The city has about 8 million people now. The hologram showed a sprawling urban center with towers reaching into the clouds, surrounded by carefully planned farming areas and industrial zones. Spacecraft moved between the city and orbital facilities in a constant stream of traffic. 8 million, Bloop 7 flashed in amazement. Our most populated world has only 3 million people total. Professor Lee So-young, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. She was the ship's historian and had spent the journey studying what little information they had about galactic civilization. If I may ask, she said politely, what is the total population of your species? Speaker Kethvara. Kethvara's scales shifted to a thoughtful blue color. The Saurian Republic has colonies on 18 worlds with a total population of about 400 million. 400 million across 18 worlds, Professor Lee repeated, making notes. That's very efficient. Humans have about 50 billion people across our 47 colonies, plus another 20 billion in space habitats and asteroid mining operations. The room went completely silent. 50 billion people was more than the combined population of several alien species. Morden was frantically working on his calculation device. 50 billion people, the resources needed for that many humans. The food production, manufacturing, transportation. How is it possible? Lieutenant Nam, who had been listening quietly, decided to join the conversation. He was a simple man who had spent most of his life in space, and he didn't understand why the aliens seemed so surprised by everything. Well, it's not that hard once you get the factories set up, he said. I used to work the asteroid belt with my family. We'd take ships about this size. He gestured to indicate something roughly the size of their maintenance pod, and strip mine whole asteroids for raw materials. Ships this size? Techmore asked. For mining? Sure. You need room for the mining equipment, processing plants, crew quarters, and storage for the refined metals. Plus, you're out there for months at a time, so you need good life support and fun facilities. Kixtal's beak was clicking rapidly with worry. You use warship-sized vessels for industrial work? Lieutenant Nam looked confused. Warship-sized? This is just a maintenance pod. Our actual mining ships are much bigger, maybe 800 meters long with full manufacturing capabilities. The aliens exchanged worried glances. The humans were casually describing industrial operations that used ships larger than the aliens' most powerful military vessels. Lieutenant Nam, Kethvara said carefully, when you say you strip mine whole, asteroids, how large are these asteroids? Oh, depends on the job. Small ones might be only a few hundred meters across. But I once worked on breaking down a rock that was about 20 kilometers wide. That was a big operation. Took 3 mining ships and about 2 years to process completely. 3 ships. Destroyed an asteroid 20 kilometers across, Kixtal said slowly. In 2 years. Well, we didn't destroy it exactly, Lieutenant Nam corrected. We turned it into useful materials. Built 2 new space homes and a military base with all that metal and rock. Morden had stopped working on his calculations. The numbers were too big for his device to handle properly. How many of these mining operations do you run at the same time? Currently, Lieutenant Nam thought for a moment, maybe 300 active mining sites in our home system alone, plus another 1,000 or so spread across our other colonies. Professor Lee decided to change the subject before the aliens became completely overwhelmed. Perhaps we could learn more about your civilizations? Your art, culture, and history interest us greatly. But Kixtal was not ready to move on. Ambassador Park, you described the Harmony's Edge as a diplomatic vessel. What class of ship is it in your fleet? Ambassador Park hesitated. She could see that the aliens were already struggling with the scale of human operations. But she had to answer honestly. The Harmony's Edge is classified as a light cruiser, she said. It's designed for diplomatic missions, scientific research, and light patrol duties. Light patrol, Kixtal repeated. A light patrol ship that is nearly 3 kilometers long. Yes, our heavy cruisers are about 4 kilometers long and our dreadnoughts are around 8 kilometers. But we only build dreadnoughts for major military operations or frontier exploration work. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Bloop 7's light patterns were flashing in what Dr. Choi recognized as extreme distress. 8 kilometers, Vix whispered. You have ships 8 kilometers long. Commander Yoon decided to try to reassure the aliens. I understand your concern, but these ships are primarily designed for exploration and colonization work. Most of their space is taken up by scientific equipment, manufacturing facilities, and housing for colonists and their families. But they could be used for military purposes? Kixtal asked. Well, they do have defensive weapons, Commander Yoon admitted, but their primary mission is peaceful. Kethvara stood up from her seat. Council members, perhaps we should take a brief break to discuss these revelations. As the aliens filed out of the meeting room, Dr. Choi turned to Ambassador Park with concern. I think we might have scared them. It's not fear exactly, Ambassador Park replied thoughtfully. It's more like they're realizing that their entire understanding of what's possible in space has just changed. We need to be very careful about how we present our capabilities from now on. In the hallway outside, the alien representatives were having urgent whispered conversations. A light cruiser, Morden was saying. Their smallest military vessel is larger than our entire battle fleet. And they have thousands of mining ships, Techmore added. The industrial capacity implications are staggering. Kixtal was pacing back and forth, his claws clicking on the metal floor. Either these humans are the most peaceful species in the galaxy, or they're so far beyond our military capabilities that fighting back would be meaningless. Maybe that's the point, Bloop 7 flashed darkly. Maybe they're not here for diplomacy at all. Maybe they're here to deliver an ultimatum. Kethvara listened to the worried voices of her colleagues and tried to think of a solution. The humans seemed genuinely friendly and peaceful, but their capabilities were so far beyond anything the galaxy had seen that it was hard to believe they had no aggressive intentions. Soon she would have to return to that meeting room and continue the cultural exchange. But first, she needed to figure out how to proceed when dealing with a species that could probably conquer the entire galaxy by accident. Techmore stared at his computer screens with growing panic. The numbers were all wrong. The gravity from the human ship was messing up Nexus Prime's delicate balance systems. The station had worked perfectly for 300 years, but now it was shaking and moving in ways it was never supposed to. The weight displacement is incredible, he said to himself. His crystal body flickered with worry patterns as he worked frantically at his controls. How can something so heavy even move through space? Chief Engineer Kim Soonho got the distress call from the station and immediately called Commander Yoon. Kim was a practical man in his 30s, with dirty hands and a tool belt that never left his side. He had spent most of his life building and fixing things in space. Commander, the aliens are having trouble because our ship is too heavy, Kim reported. Should we move further away? Commander Yoon looked out at the alien station through the bridge windows. It was a beautiful thing, all smooth curves and shining metal, but it looked tiny compared to their ship. How much further? Maybe 50,000 kilometers. That should reduce the gravity problems. Captain Lee heard the conversation and walked over. 50,000 kilometers? Won't that make the shuttle trip very long? Kim shrugged. About 6 hours each way, sir. But our shuttles are comfortable. The aliens can rest during the trip. On Nexus Prime, the council was meeting again. This time they were less panicked but more confused. Techmore had managed to stabilize the station by moving it further from the human ship, but new problems kept appearing. They want to send a shuttle, Kethvara announced to the group. A 400-meter shuttle. Vix waved her forearms in frustration. Where will we put it? Our biggest shuttle bay is only 200 meters. We could change Bay 7, Techmore suggested. Remove some walls, make the space bigger. It would take about 12 hours. 12 hours? Kixtal's feathers ruffled with impatience. We can't keep them waiting that long. Bloop 7 flashed a series of rapid colors. Maybe we should ask them if they have a smaller shuttle. Kethvara turned on the communication system. Captain Lee, We're having some difficulty with your shuttle size. Do you perhaps have a smaller ship available? Captain Lee's voice came back, sounding puzzled. Smaller? Well, we have maintenance pods that are about 50 meters long, but those aren't really made for diplomatic meetings. They don't have meeting rooms or proper life support for long visits. The aliens looked at each other. 50 meters was still bigger than many of their personal spacecraft, but it was something they could work with. 50 meters would be perfect, Kethavara replied. Dr. Choi Hana was getting ready for the shuttle trip with growing excitement. She had studied alien biology for years, but this would be her first chance to meet other species face to face. She packed her translation devices, cultural reference books, and medical scanners. Remember, Ambassador Park told her team as they gathered in the shuttle bay, we need to be very careful about cultural differences. These species have never seen ships like ours. They might be afraid or suspicious. Lieutenant Nam Junho, their shuttle pilot, was checking his small maintenance pod. He was a cheerful man in his 20s, who had worked mining asteroids in the outer solar system before this job. To him, the alien station looked like the small research outposts he used to visit. Ma'am, this pod usually carries just me and maybe 2 other people, he told the ambassador. It's going to be tight with 5 of us plus all the diplomatic equipment. We'll manage, Ambassador Park replied. Just get us there safely. The maintenance pod launched from the Harmony's edge and began its journey to Nexus Prime. Inside, the human diplomatic team was cramped but in good spirits. Through the small windows, they could see the alien station getting bigger. It's beautiful, Dr. Choi said, pressing her face to the window. Look at that design. It's completely different from anything we build. Lieutenant Nam was studying his navigation display. Strange. I'm reading dozens of ships around the station, but they're all really small. The biggest one is maybe the size of our old mining shuttles back home. Ambassador Park made a note on her tablet. Interesting. They seem to prefer smaller, more specialized ships. On Nexus Prime, the arrival of the human maintenance pod was causing its own problems. Even though it was their smallest ship, it was still bigger than anything the aliens had expected. Look at the hull thickness, Techmore said, studying his scans. It's built like a military ship, not a maintenance craft. Why do they need so much armor for routine work? Morden, the bear-like economist, was running more calculations. I've been thinking about their resource base. To build ships this large, they must have access to enormous amounts of raw materials. Either they strip mine entire planets or they've found asteroid belts far richer than anything we know about. Maybe both, Kickstal said darkly. A species that builds everything oversized might not care about environmental damage. When the human pod finally docked, the aliens got their first close look at human engineering. The docking clamps barely fit around the pod's hull, and several alien technicians had to work together to make the connections. Lieutenant Nam stepped out first, his head nearly touching the ceiling of the alien docking bay. He was followed by Ambassador Park and her team. The aliens were surprised by how normal the humans looked, despite coming from such massive ships. Welcome to Nexus Prime, Kethavara said formally. Her reptilian features were impressive, and she towered over the humans at 3 meters tall. I am Council Speaker Kethavara. We are honored by your visit. Ambassador Park bowed respectfully. Thank you for accommodating us, Speaker Kethavara. I am Ambassador Park Minji, representing the Human Colonial Alliance. Colonial Alliance? Vix asked. How many colonies do you have? Currently, we have settlements on 47 worlds and over 300 space habitats. Ambassador Park replied casually. The aliens exchanged glances. 300 space habitats? Most species in the galaxy had maybe 1 or 2 space stations. As they walked through the corridors toward the meeting room, Dr. Choi was taking notes on everything she saw. The alien architecture was elegant and efficient, with every space carefully designed for specific functions. It was the complete opposite of human design philosophy. Your station is remarkable, she told Techmore, so efficient and organized. Techmore's crystal body glowed with pride. Thank you. We believe in using resources wisely. Every part serves a purpose, nothing is wasted. That's very different from our approach, Dr. Choi said. We tend to build big and then figure out how to use the space. Techmore stopped walking. You build spaces without knowing what they're for? Well, not exactly, but we like to have room to grow. Our ships are designed to last for centuries, so we build in extra capacity for future needs. Centuries? Morden joined the conversation. How long do your ships typically operate? The Harmony's Edge is only 15 years old, but we expect it to serve for at least 200 years. maybe longer with proper maintenance. The aliens were quiet for a moment. Most of their ships were replaced every 50 years or so. The idea of using the same ship for centuries was completely foreign to them. 200 years, Morden muttered. That changes everything about the economics of construction. If you're going to use something for that long, it makes sense to build it bigger and stronger from the start. Ambassador Park smiled. Exactly. We've learned that it's usually cheaper to build something right the first time than to keep replacing it. As they reached the meeting room, Kethavara was beginning to understand that the humans weren't trying to intimidate anyone with their large ships. They simply had a completely different way of thinking about space travel and construction. But that realization led to an even more worrying question. If humans routinely built things to last for centuries and operated on scales that dwarfed the rest of the galaxy, just how advanced was their civilization? And more importantly, did the humans even know how scary they looked to everyone else? The alarm bells rang through the Nexus Prime station as the duty officer stared at his screen with wide eyes. Something was coming out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the star system. Something very, very big. Sir, we have a contact, the young Chitaran officer called to his boss. His forearms moved quickly over the control buttons as he tried to get better readings. It's huge. Kethavara walked over to look at the scanner. She was 3 meters tall with green reptilian skin and yellow eyes that showed how worried she was. In all her years working for the Galactic Council, she had never seen a ship this big on her screens. How big? She asked. 2,300 meters long, sir. My computer keeps thinking it's a space rock. Kethavara's skin changed from green to bright orange. The biggest ships in the galaxy were maybe 800 meters long. This thing was almost 3 times bigger than that. Are you sure it's a ship? She asked. Yes, sir. It's moving on its own power and sending the right signals. The humans gave us these codes last month when they first called us on the radio. The humans. Kethavara remembered those strange messages from far away. A new species wanting to join the galactic community. The council had said yes to meeting them, thinking it would be just another normal first contact. Now she was not sure this would be normal at all. Get all the council members to the emergency meeting room, she ordered, and send a message to Captain Lee Deho on that ship. Tell him we need to talk about where he can park. On the human ship called Harmony's Edge, Captain Lee Deho read the alien message with a small smile. He was 40 years old with short black hair and kind brown eyes. Behind him, the bridge was as big as a small town square. Big windows showed the stars outside, and dozens of people worked at their stations. Commander Yoon, they seem worried about docking, he said to his security chief. Commander Yoon Hyunwoo looked up from his workstation. He was younger than the captain, with a serious face and straight black hair. Worried, sir? Why would they worry? They're asking about how big our ship is and how much it weighs. I think their parking spaces might be too small. Ambassador Park Minji walked onto the bridge. She was 35 years old with long dark hair tied back neatly. She used to be a military officer before becoming a diplomat, and her sharp eyes noticed everything. Captain, I just got some interesting information about the alien ships in this system, she said. Their biggest ship is only 800 meters long. Captain Lee raised his eyebrows. 800 meters? That's smaller than our shuttle parking area. Exactly. I think we have a problem. In the council meeting room on Nexus Prime, 12 different alien species sat around a big table. They were all looking at the screen that showed the human ship, and nobody was talking. Vix was the first to speak. She looked like a giant insect with 4 arms and big compound eyes that reflected the light. How can this be possible? How can they build something so big? Bloop 7 was an alien that looked like a large sea creature. He talked by making colored lights flash across his skin, and a computer changed the lights into words. They must use huge amounts of materials. What kind of people can afford to build this? Maybe it's not one ship, said Techmore. He looked like he was made of living crystal and his body sparkled under the room lights. Maybe it's many ships stuck together? Kethavara shook her big reptilian head. Our scans show it's all one piece. The metal shell goes all the way around without breaks. This is definitely one ship. The council members looked at each other with growing fear. In their experience, big ships meant big weapons. Big weapons meant military power, and military power from strangers was always dangerous. We need to be careful, said Kikstal. He looked like a giant bird with sharp claws and bright feathers that were standing straight up to show he was upset. A ship that size could carry enough weapons to blow up this whole station. Wait, Bloop 7 flashed quickly. They came here to talk peacefully. They sent all the right codes. Maybe they don't want to fight. Peaceful people don't need ships that big, Chixtal replied, clicking his sharp beak with annoyance. On the human ship, Ambassador Park was getting ready for her first meeting with aliens. She stood in front of a mirror in her room, fixing her formal blue uniform. The room was large and comfortable, with real plants growing in pots near the big window. Dr. Choi Hana knocked on the door and came in. She was the ship's alien biology expert, a woman in her late 20s with curious dark eyes and a friendly smile. She carried a tablet computer full of information about the alien species they were about to meet. Ambassador, I've been reading about their cultures, Dr. Choi said. They seem to like small, efficient ships that do one job well. I think our way of building ships might confuse them. Confuse them how? Ambassador Park asked. Well, they build one ship for fighting, one ship for trading, one ship for exploring. We build ships that do everything at once. The Harmony's Edge is supposed to be for diplomatic meetings, but it also has workshops, gardens, homes for 5,000 people, science labs, and factories. To them, that might seem wasteful or suspicious. Ambassador Park nodded thoughtfully. So they might think we're hiding something bad? It's possible. We need to be very clear that we want peace. Back on Nexus Prime, the emergency council meeting was getting loud. The alien representatives were arguing about what to do with the humans. I say we don't let them dock, Kixtal said firmly. Send them away until we know more about what they want. That would be a terrible insult, Kethavara replied. They followed all the right rules. We invited them here. But where can they dock? Techmore asked. Our biggest parking bay is only 800 meters long. Their ship won't fit even halfway in. Maybe they have smaller ships inside the big one, suggested Vix. Like carrier ships that hold fighter planes? Morden had been quiet during the argument. He looked like a giant bear with brown fur and small dark eyes. Now he spoke up. I've been doing math about the materials needed to build something that big. The amount of metal, energy, and time required is incredible. Either these humans control huge amounts of raw materials, or they have technology far beyond anything we know. The room went quiet again. Everyone was thinking the same thing. If the humans could build ships this big, what else could they build? Captain Lee's voice came over the communication system, calm and friendly. Nexus Prime Control, this is Captain Lee Deho of the human ship Harmony's Edge. We understand you're having some problems with parking. Would it help if we stay far away and use our small shuttles instead? Techmore looked relieved. Yes, that would be much better. How big are your shuttles? There was a pause. Then Captain Lee replied, Our standard diplomatic shuttle is 400 meters long. Will that work? The silence in the council room was complete. Their shuttles were bigger than most alien warships. Kethavara closed her eyes and took a deep breath. This first meeting with humans was going to be much harder than anyone had expected. The humans were either the most peaceful giants in the galaxy, or the most dangerous species they had ever met. Soon they would find out which one was true.